Hi friends, welcome to the enchanting world of Aesop's Fables, where timeless tales come to life in the form of an audiobook. Aesop, a legendary ancient storyteller, weaves together a tapestry of moral lessons through the voices of animals, mythical creatures, and everyday characters. These fables, passed down through generations, teach us valuable life lessons in the most captivating way. Through the soothing tones of the narrator, let these fables transport you to distant lands and times, where the simplest of stories carry the weight of profound truths. Join us as we explore the ageless wisdom of Aesop's fables. The Frogs and the Ox. An ox came down to a reedy pool to drink. As he splashed heavily into the water, he crushed a young frog into the mud. The old frog soon missed the little one, and asked his brothers and sisters what had become of him. "A great big monster," said one of them, "stepped on little brother, with one of his huge feet." "Big, was he?" said the old frog, puffing herself up. "Was he as big as this?" "Oh, much bigger," they cried. The frog puffed up still more. "He could not have been bigger than this," she said. But the little frogs all declared that the monster was much, much bigger. And the old frog kept puffing herself out more and more until, all at once, she burst. The end of the story, The Frogs and the Ox. The moral of this story is, do not attempt the impossible. Belling the cat. The mice once called a meeting to decide on a plan, to free themselves of their enemy, the cat. At least, they wished to find some way of knowing when she was coming, so they might have time to run away. Indeed, something had to be done, for they lived in such constant fear of her claws that they hardly dared stir from their dens, by night or day. Many plans were discussed, but none of them was thought good enough. At last, a very young mouse got up, and said, "I have a plan that seems very simple, but I know it will be successful. All we have to do is, to hang a bell around the cat's neck. When we hear the bell ringing, we will know immediately that our enemy is coming." All the mice were much surprised that they had not thought of such a plan before. But in the midst of the rejoicing over their good fortune, an old mouse arose and said, "I will say that the plan of the young mouse is very good. But let me ask one question. Who will bell the cat?" End of the story, Belling the Cat. The moral of this story is, it is one thing to say that something should be done, but quite a different matter to do it. The Fox and the Grapes. A fox one day spied a beautiful bunch of ripe grapes, hanging from a vine, trained along the branches of a tree. The grapes seemed ready to burst with juice, and the fox's mouth watered as he gazed longingly at them. The bunch hung from a high branch, and the fox had to jump for it. The first time he jumped, he missed it by a long way. So he walked off a short distance, and took a running leap at it, only to fall short once more. Again and again, he tried, but in vain. Now he sat down, and looked at the grapes in disgust. "What a fool I am," he said. "Here, I am wearing myself out to get a bunch of sour grapes that are not worth gaping for." And off he walked very, very scornfully. End of the story, The Fox and the Grapes. The moral of this story is, there are many who pretend to despise and belittle that which is beyond their reach. The Wolf and the Crane. A wolf had been feasting too greedily, and a bone had stuck crosswise in his throat. He could get it neither up nor down, and of course, he could not eat a thing. Naturally, that was an awful state of affairs for a greedy wolf. So, away he hurried to the crane. He was sure that she, with her long neck and bill, would easily be able to reach the bone, and pull it out. "I will reward you very handsomely," said the wolf, "if you pull that bone out for me." The crane, as you can imagine, was very uneasy about putting her head in a wolf's throat. But she was grasping in nature, so she did what the wolf asked her to do. When the wolf felt that the bone was gone, he started to walk away. "But what about my reward?" called the crane, anxiously. "What?" snarled the wolf, whirling around. "Haven't you got it? Isn't it enough that I let you take your head out of my mouth without snapping it off?" End of the story, The Wolf and the Crane. The moral of this story is, expect no reward for serving the wicked. The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A town mouse once visited a relative who lived in the country. For lunch, the country mouse served wheat stalks, roots, and acorns, with a dash of cold water for drink. The town mouse ate very sparingly, nibbling a little of this and a little of that, and by her manner making it very plain that she ate the simple food only to be polite. After the meal, the friends had a long talk, or rather the town mouse talked about her life in the city, while the country mouse listened. They then went to bed, in a cozy nest in the hedgerow, and slept in quiet and comfort, until morning. In her sleep, the country mouse dreamed she was a town mouse with all the luxuries and delights of city life that her friend had described for her. So, the next day, when the town mouse asked the country mouse to go home with her to the city, she gladly said yes. When they reached the mansion in which the town mouse lived, they found on the table, in the dining room, the leavings of a very fine banquet. There were sweetmeats and jellies, pastries, delicious cheeses, indeed, the most tempting foods that a mouse can imagine. But just as the country mouse was about to nibble a dainty bit of pastry, she heard a cat mew loudly and scratch at the door. In great fear, the mice scurried to a hiding place, where they lay quite still, for a long time, hardly daring to breathe. When at last they ventured back to the feast, the door opened suddenly, and in came the servants to clear the table, followed by the house dog. The country mouse stopped in the town mouse's den, only long enough to pick up her carpet bag and umbrella. "You may have luxuries and dainties that I have not," she said, as she hurried away, "but I prefer my plain food and simple life in the country, with the peace and security that go with it." End of the story, The Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. The moral of this story is, poverty with security is better than plenty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. The Gnat and the Bull. A gnat flew over the meadow, with much buzzing for so small a creature, and settled on the tip of one of the horns of a bull. After he had rested a short time, he made ready to fly away. But before he left, he begged the bull's pardon for having used his horn for a resting place. "You must be very glad to have me go now," he said. "It's all the same to me," replied the bull. "I did not even know you were there." End of the story, The Gnat and the Bull. The moral of this story is, we are often of greater importance in our own eyes than in the eyes of our neighbor. The smaller the mind, the greater the conceit. The Plane Tree. Two travelers, walking in the noonday sun, sought the shade of a wide-spreading tree to rest. As they lay, looking up among the pleasant leaves, they saw that it was a plane tree. "How useless is the plane," said one of them. "It bears no fruit whatever, and only serves to litter the ground with leaves." "Ungrateful creatures," said a voice from the plane tree. "You lie here in my cooling shade, and yet you say, I am useless. Thus ungratefully, O Jupiter, do men receive their blessings. End of the story. The Plane Tree. The moral of this story is, our best blessings are often the least appreciated. The Owl and the Grasshopper. The owl always takes her sleep during the day. Then after sundown, when the rosy light fades from the sky, and the shadows rise slowly through the wood, out she comes ruffling and blinking from the old hollow tree. Now, her weird, hoo echoes through the quiet wood, and she begins her hunt for the bugs, and beetles, frogs, and mice, she likes so well to eat. Now, there was a certain old owl, who had become very cross and hard to please as she grew older, especially if anything disturbed her daily slumbers. One warm summer afternoon, as she dozed away in her den in the old oak tree, a grasshopper nearby began a joyous, but very raspy song. Out popped the old owl's head from the opening in the tree, that served her both for door and for window. "Get away from here, sir," she said to the grasshopper. "Have you no manners? You should at least respect my age and leave me to sleep in quiet." But the grasshopper answered saucily, that he had as much right to his place in the sun, as the owl had to her place, in the old oak. Then he struck up a louder, and still more rasping tune. The wise old owl knew quite well that it would do no good to argue with the grasshopper, nor with anybody else for that matter. Besides, her eyes were not sharp enough by day to permit her to punish the grasshopper as he deserved. So, she laid aside all hard words, and spoke very kindly to him. "Well, sir," she said, "if I must stay awake, I am going to settle right down to enjoy your singing. Now that I think of it, I have a wonderful wine here, sent me from Olympus, of which I am told Apollo drinks before he sings to the high gods. Please come up, and taste this delicious drink with me. I know, it will make you sing like Apollo himself." The foolish grasshopper was taken in by the owl's flattering words. Up he jumped to the owl's den, but as soon as he was near enough so the old owl could see him clearly, she pounced upon him and ate him up. End of the story. The Owl and the Grasshopper. The moral of this story is, flattery is not a proof of true admiration. Do not let flattery throw you off your guard against an enemy. The Lion and the Mouse. A lion lay asleep in the forest, his great head resting on his paws. A timid little mouse came upon him unexpectedly, and in her fright and haste to get away, ran across the lion's nose. Roused from his nap, the lion laid his huge paw angrily on the tiny creature to kill her. "Spare me," begged the poor mouse. "Please let me go, and some day I will surely repay you." The lion was much amused to think that a mouse could ever help him. But he was generous and finally let the mouse go. Some days later, while stalking his prey in the forest, the lion was caught in the toils of a hunter's net. Unable to free himself, he filled the forest with his angry roaring. The mouse knew the voice and quickly found the lion struggling in the net. Running to one of the great ropes that bound him, she gnawed it until it parted, and soon the lion was free. "You laughed when I said I would repay you," said the mouse. "Now you see that even a mouse can help a lion." End of the story. The Lion and the Mouse. The moral of the story is, kindness is never wasted. The Crow and the Pitcher. In a spell of dry weather, when the birds could find very little to drink, a thirsty crow found a pitcher, with a little water in it. But the pitcher was high and had a narrow neck, and no matter how he tried, the crow could not reach the water. The poor thing felt as if he must die of thirst. Then an idea came to him. Picking up some small pebbles, he dropped them into the pitcher one by one. With each pebble, The water rose a little higher until at last, it was near enough, so he could drink. End of the story, The Crow and the Pitcher. The moral of this story is, in a pinch, a good use of our wits may help us out. End of Aesop's Fables, Part 1. Thank you for watching. Hope you have enjoyed the audiobook, Aesop's Fables, Part 1. Please listen to the next episode. Do not forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe to www.youtube.com/@weaversnest for more interesting videos. Also, visit our website, www.weaversnest.org.